I'm Chris Perry with Perry Prosthetics. I'm a founder and owner of Perry Prosthetics, an ABC certified prosthetist and state licensed prosthetist in the state of Ohio. As an effort to bring education quicker to our patients, we've decided to make a video that explains the fitting process and the rehabilitation process for new amputees. If you're an existing amputee, you'll recognize a lot of this, but you may see that we do things a bit different than what you're used to as well. So I would like to start with what I get asked all the time. The two biggest things everybody wants to know is what's possible and how soon am I going to get there. So what's possible is different for everybody depending on the issues that they have, the comorbidities or the other disease processes or injuries, depending on why you're a new amputee. But for most people that have gone through limb loss due to vascular issues or traumatic issues that don't have additional injuries or disease processes, what's possible is the same types of things you were doing before you lost the limb. This would include recreational activities, work activities. It really depends on how in depth those activities were, how high functioning they were. A lot of people find in the beginning they use an assistive device. Some people will work their way toward getting off the assistive device. Other people, depending on their capabilities, will stick with an assistive device, but still enjoy the same type of activities, engagement with friends, and work and play as they did before. When you're going to be able to do that is also dependent on each individual. Everybody heals differently. The time frame from when you're new, from the amputation to the time you get a prosthesis and you're starting in therapy, is typically if there's no incidences where that time frame is delayed, it's typically between 7 and 8 weeks. If there is a delay, it's dependent on what the reason the delay is, healing, or maybe it's a logistical thing. We try to keep you moving forward as quickly as possible. The biggest thing is with Perry Prosthetics, once we meet you, is we follow up with you weekly. If you're in something we provided, we're going to see you weekly. If you are not, if nothing was ordered while you're healing, you will hear from us weekly, and we can keep in unison with where your appointments are and where you're at in the healing process. So again, we want to close that gap of waiting now. During that time, I would recommend that you take advantage of physical therapy when you're in the hospital or directly after leaving the hospital. If you're in an acute rehab setting, you're getting more therapy than you will after that. That therapy is designed to make you as independent as possible and to prepare your limb and the strength of your existing muscles to better utilize a prosthesis. So I always tell people, when you go to therapy, don't go down there and just show up and say, all right, here I am, go ahead and do what you need to do. Go down there and make them work. Go down there and invest time into doing what they're teaching you. And then when you leave therapy, if you're given home-based exercises, take time to do them. They will make a significant difference in the outcome of your use of a prosthesis. Once the limb is healed, the sutures are removed, or the staples, whichever your surgeon used, then we can get started with a heavier compression. That heavier compression, we like to see that for anywhere between 10 to 14 days on your limb. It's important that you're wearing it as much as you can. These are designed to be on pretty much all the time. You take them off for bathing, take them off for wound inspection. If you want to take them off for an hour in the evening to kind of relax, but put them back on before you go to sleep. Find that more often than not, people wear them really well because they like the sensation that it brings to the limb. It actually feels better to have some light compression on a limb than to have their limb laying there with no compression. So this is not something I usually have to talk people into. One of the other things that compression does, and it's kind of an anecdotal experience. I haven't seen a study or a scientific study done, but I get a lot of feedback over the 35 years I've been doing this, is that the compression also helps alleviate phantom pains. And if you're having phantom pains, you will know that there's anything that can help with that, you're going to want to do, because they're most prevalent, if at all, right after surgery. In the first few months, or definitely the first week, there's 3 different types of pain that you'll experience. One's limb pain. Limb pain can be anything from the surgical pain that you would have with any surgery. If you bumped your limb and it was tender, that would cause pain. That's limb pain. That's regular physical pain to your limb. There's phantom pain. The phantom does not mean it's not real. Phantom only means that it's in the part of the limb that's absent, and it is very real. So phantom pain are painful sensations that are unnatural. So they are not something you would normally experience if you had the limb. So sharp stabbing pains, burning sensations, real intense pins and needles or tingling. The most common one is probably the pins and needles, and it's usually present. Sometimes it's very intense, and other times it just feels like your leg's asleep, but you can feel the presence of the entire leg. These are all things that start to taper off. They're different for everybody. Many people don't have any. So if it's a phantom pain, make sure you let your doctors, your nurses know that you're having them. I'm pretty sure you will, because they can be intense. They will talk to the doctor about it. There are some medications that can help with them. Other things you can do is gently rub the limb or tap the limb. You can actually rub or tap the other limb in the area that you're having the sensation on the absent limb. Sometimes that helps. There's no true explanation for phantom pain. There's no definitive explanation for phantom pain. And what helps one person may not help the other. Sometimes heat helps. Sometimes it makes it worse. Sometimes cold packs help. Sometimes it makes it worse. So you have to experiment and find what gives you the greatest amount of comfort. And then the third type of pain is phantom sensation. Again, it's in the limb that's absent. But these are sensations that are more normal sensations, like something itches in the foot, or you feel like almost like a cramp in the arch of your foot or a toe. Or those are things that you would experience or could experience if the foot was there. And those have more of a scientific explanation behind them with the way your nerve mapping and reflexes work. So same thing though, you can manipulate that area but through massage or tapping. Most of the time they're not extremely painful. They're just odd because the limb's missing. I used to have one that felt like I was standing in a puddle of water and my toes were wet. And actually, so it didn't hurt. I actually kind of miss it. I haven't had it in years. So these things taper off and typically go away. If they don't, then we work with your doctor to see, first of all, how intense they are and whether they're tolerable or not tolerable, and then how do we address them. After that, we can begin with casting your limb for the fitting of the prosthesis. So when I say casting your limb, we take an impression of your limb, whether you're above the knee or below the knee. And we can do that manually with plaster by doing like an old-time plaster cast that gives us a representation of your limb. Sometimes it can be done with measurements, and we use templates in a digital application. And then we can also do scanning technology, where we take a scan of your limb and it provides us with a 3D digital representation of your limb, which we then also import into some digital platforms where we modify it. Once we do the casting procedure, we do the work in-house to provide a test socket. You come back for an appointment, we fit you with a clear plastic socket. The socket is the part of the prosthesis that fits your residual limb. So at that appointment, we really look at getting you fit, getting it comfortable. Next appointment would be either the second test socket, where we'd work more on walking and alignment of the prosthesis, or depending on the fit of the last appointment, we may have gone to the finished product, which is a lighter weight, stronger socket, typically made with carbon fiber. maybe a flexible liner, depending on what your needs are. And we continue to go through the fitting and donning process, teach you how to put it on, how to take it off, how to adjust that fit, and then move forward into the delivery and get you set up with physical therapy. Here at Perry Prosthetics, we're very involved with your entire rehabilitation process. So we've already probably found out who you're going to be seeing for physical therapy through you or your physician or through recommendations, and we've started that communication so that between the time you get a prosthesis and the time you start therapy, we close that gap or waiting period as much as possible. Then you start working with therapy. I think most people are surprised at how much they can accomplish within the first month of using a prosthesis. I always let people know that are new amputees, really have some grace with yourself for the first 3 months. You'll have some ups and downs. It's all part of the process of anything new. You need to celebrate your ups and give yourself grace for where you don't feel you're doing as well. Because at the end of the first 3 months, I'm sure that you're going to be pretty excited about where you're at with your abilities. From that point, I tell everybody, really your first year is you getting in tune with your prosthesis, and your abilities at the end of your first year is such that you don't have to try something to know how well can do it. You'll know how well you'll do something by knowing what it is and how good you are with your prosthesis. So it becomes more of a part of you in that first year. The other thing you want to do is listen to them when they talk about positioning your limb. You can develop flexion contractures if you sit with your joints bent or flexed, which is a tightening of the flexor muscles. That makes it very difficult when it comes time to stand up and stretch everything out and use a prosthesis. So all these things that you're being taught are being taught for a reason. So anytime that you can keep the joint that's remaining in a neutral position, so not flexed or overly extended while you're sitting around, it helps keep it from getting contracted, which is where the flexor muscles shorten and make it difficult to straighten again after being that way for quite some time during the healing process. So the hip flexors are difficult because when you sit, they're flexed. It's hard to extend them. But what you can do is make sure you spend time throughout the day, either with therapy, or they will have shown you different exercises you can do, but kind of roll up and on your side and pushing that limb back as if you're straightening your leg out and holding it, and just do several of those and hold them for 10 to 15 seconds during each time you do it. Rolling over on your stomach so that you are laying, if that's comfortable, you're laying flat and your legs are extended. Can be part of that exercise. For the knee, if you're below the knee and the knee is flexed, that's much easier to keep straight. If you're sitting around with a footstool or your legs up, just make sure you're not propping anything behind the knee, that you put whatever padding or pillow or whatever you're laying your leg on toward the end of the back of your limb, below the knee joint. That way it keeps it extended. But you can also do the exercises throughout the day, the actual act of extending and holding. That's going to help with strengthening. That's going to help with desensitizing your limb from the whether you have phantom pains or not. It'll help desensitize your limb and get it used to having pressure or sensation against it, because once we fit you with a prosthesis, you will have a socket that completely touches your entire limb. The other question I get all the time is people are like, how am I going to stand on the end of this limb? Because it's so tender at the very end. When we fit you with a prosthetic device, it's important that you know that we don't put any more pressure on the end of the limb than it can tolerate. We utilize the entire surface area of the whole limb to bear your weight. So for instance, with me, I am very sensitive distally. I can't take more than about 5 pounds, 3 to 5 pounds of pressure on the very distal end. Yet I weigh 180 pounds and I can get up and jump on my prosthesis and I don't feel the end. And that's because all my weight is being supported through the total surface of my limb. So no, rest assured, you don't have to toughen up to where you can tolerate your body weight on the end of the limb. The next thing that I'd like to talk about is falls. If you're a new amputee, you don't want to fall. Nobody wants to fall, particularly if you're a new amputee. One of the things that can set back the entire fitting process and even the characteristics of your limb is if you fall and break open an incision. Most of the time, if you break open an incision, they can't suture it back shut because of bacteria. They have to let it heal shut like a wound. Healing a wound takes time, which delays the entire fitting process. It also may leave scarring that becomes an obstacle in the prosthetic fitting process. A lot of times we can fit around that. Sometimes it's more difficult than other times. And I'm giving this talk about falls and how to avoid them, mostly because when I was a new amputee, I was 16, I went home. The first week I was home, I fell, landed on the end of my limb, broke it open slightly, not bad, and went back to the hospital for a week. The pain from that fall was something that I still remember. So we don't want you to fall. My tips and tricks to not falling are pretty simple. One, take your time. You're going to get back to doing those things. Don't throw caution to the wind when it comes to maneuvering, getting out of bed, using the bathroom, moving across the room. If there's something on the floor, have somebody move it or you move it. Don't try to negotiate it. Don't try to go over it. Don't feel so confident that you can get around it. Even if you could, still take the time to make the area safe. Let people help. This is a big one. I remember all too well when you're a new amputee, one of the overpowering feelings you have is that you're a burden on the people around you and your family, particularly if you were in a key role within your family as a provider or a support person. And here now you are unable to fulfill that role. Always try to see yourself through their eyes. Obviously, if the roles were reversed, you'd be the first one there to be providing help. So give yourself some grace. Let your family help you. I guarantee you, when you get done with us, you're gonna get your to-do list back. So take your time. The areas to take your time are bathroom activities. That's where we see people fall the most. Getting up and being in a hurry to get to the bathroom. If you're not gonna make it to the bathroom while being cautious, it's way easier to clean up a mess than it is to delay yourself for a month or a month and a half and go through all the pain of a fall. If you have issues with the frequency of going to the bathroom, try using the clock and giving yourself times or set intervals where you're going to just get up and go, because you know you're going to need to. That way it doesn't become an urgent situation. The other area that we see is people waking up groggy or tired and swinging up over the edge of the bed and standing up and walking away, forgetting that they don't have their limb at whatever level, and falling. So it's always important, if you're in a hospital bed, that the rails are up when you're sleeping. If you're not in a hospital bed, put if you're using a chair or a walker, put it right next to the bed on the side you get up, so that it's right in front of you, so that when you do get up and you see, hey, that thing's in my way, it'll jog your memories of why it's there, and then you'll remember not to get up and walk away. One thing I learned a long time ago from a gentleman that was a ski instructor for amputee skiing was, if you are standing on your leg, whichever leg is not been amputated, and you go to fall, you're automatically going to put the opposite leg out to catch you. It's not such a good idea to do that now that it's gone, because you'll fall on the end of it. So, and that's a reflex. That's something, because we've been, our whole life we've had the limb. When we fall, we do that. To break that reflex, you need to make eye contact with your limb. So if you're in a situation where you're being safe and you still ended up where you feel like you're going to fall, you're actually going down, I want you to take time to look down at your limb. Your hands will do what they need to do. They've been doing it your whole life. But take time to look at your limb, and you will automatically bring it up and draw it out of the way. And your body will take over, your instincts will take over and protect that area, as long as you look at it and remind yourself it needs protection. So just looking at it will save you from landing on the end of it 9 times out of 10. And I don't know how many times I've heard over the years people come back and say, wow, that worked. I fell and I landed kind of on my butt cheek and my hand, and I did not hit my limb. So that's very important. But I want you to, first of all, make sure you're eating good. And some of you may be on a restricted diet, others aren't. We're looking for high protein, healthy carbohydrates. You need the carbs to heal. You need the protein for muscle retention and strengthening. Try to refrain from, particularly if it's a vascular issue, caffeine, smoking, drinking, and those are good for any issue. Healing process will move forward quicker if you're not doing any of those things. Drinking can be an issue if you're up and trying to get around. The likelihood of you losing your balance and falling is significantly higher. So during your healing process and into the beginning of your journey with the fitting process and beginning to walk with the prosthesis, the best, trying to reduce all those things the best you can is really going to benefit you. That's going to encompass your beginning of your journey as a new amputee, and that first device that you get. We talked about the fitting process. Your limb is going to go through the most amount of changes in the first 3 months of being a new amputee, and during that time, you will see your prosthetist here at Perry Prosthetics on a regular basis, and each time we see you, we spend time educating you about your own limb and what you can do to help make adjustments through sock ply management, which you'll learn more about later, or knowing when to come back in and see us so that we can make an adjustment. And you become an expert at your own limb. That's our goal, is to make you an expert with your own limb. You have all the answers by the end of that process. And if there is something that's new, you always know who to contact, and we're readily available for that. That process is even more robust because now we're a team. We've spent 3 months or more together, working together, fitting, adjusting, learning to walk and align it. You now have, and you become an expert at your own prosthesis. So now we are a better team for that next one. And because of that, we also can send you out to test it in your own world instead of just in our facility. That's something that you can look forward to. It's also a reason to stay in tune with your own fitting and with us as we teach you, because that all leads to better outcomes in the future. So, like I said, for someone below the knee, that process is about 3 months on average. For somebody above the knee, it takes a little longer to get through those physiological changes to where the limb is stabilized, and can take 4 to 6 months. I'm glad that you chose Perry Prosthetics to work with you. We are going to be with you every step of the way. Anytime you have questions, we're available. If anything deviates from what I talked about today, there are answers, there's reasons for that, and you certainly need to ask. Thank you.